Hello everyone, and welcome back to another installment in my De-Interlining Chronicles series. Last time, we talked about Queens Boulevard and the Briarwood situation, and today we'll be continuing those plans, but in a different part of the city, Brooklyn. Before we get into the video, I would like to shout out TMC in my Discord server, link in the description by the way, for contributing to this series. I would also like to say that if you haven't seen the past videos in this series, go watch them now, as they will explain all of the changes we've already made to the system. But just in case you don't want to, I'm gonna throw up a quick graphic showing what we've changed so far. Okay, so now that you're all caught up, what are we going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to be fixing DeKalb Junction and de-interlining Brooklyn. Well, for the most part. First off, let's talk about the E and K trains. With the previous changes, we had them terminating at the World Trade Center station, but in this video, we'll be extending them past WTC. Now, those of you who may have been to the station before, or are currently looking at the track map on screen, would know that the line ends at WTC. But you would also notice that it is very close to the Broadway line. Yeah. We're going to be creating a connection to the Broadway line from the World Trade Center station. Realistically, this is possible. It's maybe 200 feet or so of new tunnel connecting two existing lines together. With this new connection, we'll be extending the K train to Bay Ridge, 95th Street in Brooklyn, giving the 4th Avenue local line 18 trains per hour, an 8 train increase from what it already sees. The E train would get extended to Whitehall Street with rush hour service to Bay Parkway via the West End line, which will add a further 12 trains per hour to the 4th Avenue local north of 36th Street. That's a train every 2 minutes. With these changes and the E and K now running along Broadway South, you might wonder what's going to happen to the R line. Well, we're going to be cutting it back to the City Hall station. Provisions for a crossover on the upper level of the station exist for this to happen. As much as I would love to at least have the R run to Whitehall Street to allow for a connection to the 8th Avenue line, it can't happen. The E and K would run about 30 trains per hour through the new connection, dubbed the Montague connection, so there just isn't the capacity to allow that, unfortunately. Now, those of you remembering our changes in the previous episode will know that the R train doesn't have access to a yard now, and while that is an issue, it can be resolved. During rush hour, we could run 3 or so R trains to Forest Hills for access to Jamaica Yard. With the F running 15 trains per hour and the M running 12, there is some extra capacity on the local line that allows for this to happen. Now of course, this is not the ideal situation. All lines should have a yard, but in this case, I think it's okay. You might also mention the interlining on Queens Boulevard. However, with only 3 trains per hour running rush to Forest Hills, it doesn't seem like it would make much of an issue. There's extra capacity on Queens Boulevard that allows us to have a rush hour extension there. We could solve the R not having a yard in the future though, if the Astoria line extension to LaGuardia Airport ever happens. With that, we would construct a subway yard around the Con Edison substation at 20th Avenue. This helps with 2 issues. The R not having a yard, and there not being enough subway yards in the system. Currently, yards are so over capacity that during late nights, some trains are stored on the express tracks around the system. This leaves them vulnerable to tagging and vandalism. I've had arguments with some about the addition of the Astoria yard, and to be honest, any opposition for this new yard is utterly stupid, given the aforementioned information about yards being over capacity. Back to Brooklyn though, the 4th Avenue local line wouldn't be the only line with changes done to it. On West End, we'll be taking the Delta and putting it on Brighton with the Bravo. The B would continue to run express along Brighton while the Delta handles local service. Unfortunately, this would require us removing the Q from Brighton, and rider preference is Broadway on the line, but it is a 1-block walk and there are free transfers to the N and Q at Atlantic Avenue and Herald Square. It shouldn't be much trouble just to transfer or walk, right? Obviously, with us moving the Delta to Brighton, we would move the Q to West End. This is where it gets interesting. We all know how long the ride is down West End, and how much it can benefit from some peak direction express service. The issue here though is that the Q would only run 15 trains per hour, and that just isn't enough for peak direction express service, since you need to split expresses and locals in half. Here's where the E comes in handy. During rush hour, I propose sending the E local down West End to Bay Parkway to allow the Q train to run peak express service. Unfortunately, this is interlining though, and it might cause some delays around 36th Street, but it will speed up West End service, and people wanting to get to the 8th Avenue line would have a useful one-seat ride right there. The reason for these changes in Brooklyn is that of one thing: DeKalb Junction. This junction basically controls the whole of the B division. One thing goes wrong here and the delays begin and cascade quickly throughout the system. This is the main part of the system that needs de-interlining. Currently, here, N trains cross in front of Deltas to reach the 4th Avenue line and vice versa, while Q trains cross in front of B trains to reach the Brighton line and vice versa. With these proposed changes, the E and K would stop on the inner two tracks at DeKalb Avenue, the B and D on the outer two, and the N and Q trains skip it entirely. This fully de-interlines DeKalb Junction and lessens and possibly even prevents delays caused by trains merging here. And now for the last change, which isn't as much of an issue as DeKalb, but is a drastic improvement to service, is the F Express train. No, I'm not talking about Queens Boulevard, I'm talking about Culver. Specifically between J Street and Church Avenue. Currently, only 4 express trains run every day, 2 in the morning rush and 2 in the evening rush. My plan is to make that an all-day thing, with expresses running in both directions. I mentioned this in my R211 video about 2 weeks back, but with new car assignments, the G possibly being extended to 8 cars, and CBTC improvements on both Culver and Crosstown, it can run Culver local on its own. Now, it's not as simple as just running all F's express and all G's local. More, albeit one thing needs to be done to allow for riders needing to get into Manhattan, and this is the ability to easily transfer from the G to a line that runs through the borough. Yeah, we already have a cross-platform transfer at 7th Avenue and the A at Hoyt Street, but there's one more transfer we can implement. This transfer involves the reopening of the lower level of Bergen Street. Yes, Bergen Street has a lower level. The platforms were removed from service during the 1990s, and because of a fire in 1999, the relay room was damaged, making the express tracks unusable. It was rebuilt in 2008, and express service was reinstated in 2019. Under my plans for Culver Express service, the lower level would be repaired and reopened, allowing G-Train riders to transfer to an F there. While riders living at stations like Carroll Street, Smith 9th, and 15th Street will lose out on a one-seat ride into Manhattan, they have cross-platform transfers to the Express at 7th Avenue and the A Express at Hoyt Street. This would ultimately speed up the commute of many riders living along the Culver line and remove any capacity limits caused by interlining on the G. While this may receive opposition, and I know you all are waiting to post y'all comments about this, these plans will ultimately make the system better and improve service on the lines mentioned. You might lose a couple of one-seat rides in the process, but with cross-platform transfers in many places, it shouldn't be much of an issue. If you have any thoughts about this video, leave them down in the comment section below, and stay civilized. Anyway, if you would like to get more from Mystic Transit, like, subscribe, and consider becoming a channel member.